And this is an event organized by the New York City Vegetarian and Vegan Meetup Group. So we're really excited. And so how many of you are first timers? Never been to one of our events before? All right, excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all. Special welcome to the first timers. As you may know, this meetup group is all volunteer run, and we do about, on average, one event every week. And so we are actually the largest veg meetup in the world with over 14,000 members. So anyway, so give yourselves a round of applause for being a part of this. The force behind this, and he has a lot of support from a lot of the other volunteers. So the New York City Meetup Group. And also want to thank Caravan of Dreams. They gave us this space without any additional charge, and so we want to thank them. And of course, it's a great all-vegan restaurant, which has been here for decades. Will, so let me give you a quick introduction and mention a few other things. So Will, and he's joined by his spouse, Madeline. So let's give Madeline a round of applause. Madeline, and if you notice some of the artwork here, it's actually done by Madeline. And so she has her repertoire in this folder here as well, and the works that are here and the cover of his book and all that. So Madeline is this great artist. Also, I wanted to ask you, how many of you are new vegans? Been vegan for the last 6 months or a year, something like that?
Right here.
A few. Fantastic. All right, excellent. So this is great. So I want to especially thank you and anyone who brought other people with you, because it's really meetup groups, and all these groups are all about sharing ideas, learning from one another, and kind of reaffirming what we have come to believe is such a great thing. So thanks for all the new people, and please take advantage of the meetup group and all the other great resources we have in the area here, because it just helps, make it so much easier. New York City is such a great place to be vegan. I'm actually, last year, about 2 or 3 years ago, with this vegan meetup group, and so we had a great event with him, so we're really excited that he's back again. And Will is a former Zen monk, and he has his PhD from UC Berkeley. And his writings, music, presentations focus on compassion, creativity, intuition, and the intersectionality of social justice, animal liberation, and environmental health, spiritual and peace issues. Will, Dr. Tuttle, offers presentations, workshops, and trainings internationally on the World Peace Diet. They just came back not too long ago from a European tour. Will has been vegan for over 35 years, since 1980. And so that's a long time. And so he's really a true visionary. I've had the pleasure of knowing Will since 1993. I actually met Will, and I was just amazed by Will with his serenity and his just his beautiful aura. And so we met a number of times in the 90s, but I think we really became much better friends once he published this great book called The World Peace Diet. And once he did that, this was the book that I thought, wow, this is like probably one of the best books I've read on the subject, because he covers all the important issues that you talk about. Talks about health, talks about the animals, of course, talks about the environmental issues, but Will actually takes it much deeper than that. And it really talks about the deep connections we have with our food, with our culture, spirituality. And so I hope we get a flavor of some of that today in the talk. He talks about a lot of great ideas about how we as a society, we reduce, it's like the reductionist tendencies of how we treat animals and nature. He also talks about the domination of the feminine. There's so many great chapters in this book. And I highly encourage anyone who hasn't read the book or hasn't, yet read the book to please pick up a copy. And so he has a lot of information here, which will be available for sale. Everything is discounted, and so please do consider buying the books. We have CDs. There's an audio book. Will is also an accomplished musician. He's a pianist, and so a lot of that music is here too. And also some of the works of art are also available for purchase. So I do encourage you to visit the table afterwards and to talk to Will, ask any questions, pick up copies. The holiday season is coming up. One of my favorite gifts for people is the World Peace Diet. I buy 5 or 10 copies at a time, and I give them out, because what better than to support the vegan economy and to get a great message out. So please consider doing that as well if you are able. As I mentioned, he plays the piano. He has a lot of original piano music, and that's also linked on his website. And I want to, again, especially mention Madeline, who's a visionary artist. She's from Switzerland, and she specializes in painting that celebrates the beauty of animals and nature. Madeline is also a flutist. She's a Waldorf teacher. She's a vegan cook and coach, and an organic gardener. And so, as I mentioned, her works are here as well. The World Peace Diet illuminates the hidden core of our culture, helps us understand it. It offers a compelling and liberating understanding of our food. It's the first book to make explicit the invisible connections between our culture, food, and the source of our broad range of problems, and the way to a positive transformation in our individual and collective lives. It's been called one of the most compelling and important books of the 21st century, the foundation of a new society based on the truth of the interconnectedness of all life. It's really, hands down, probably my favorite book, on this topic. It became an Amazon #1 bestseller in 2010. It's been published in 16 languages. There's also a Kindle edition and an audiobook too. So those are all available. We're going to hold off on the question and answers after this event, but when you get a chance, once he's finished, please do come up to the table, please ask him, please talk to him. He'll sign copies of the book. Again, encourage you to purchase them if you can, and they make great gifts. And we sent that basket around for donations. So hopefully I've covered most of the things I want to talk about. Dr. Will Tuttle.
Thanks so much. Let's give a big hand to Saurabh and everyone who made this possible. I really am very grateful for all of you for enduring this kind of a long delay. As a vegan, I don't like to cause unnecessary suffering to sentient beings. I've been sitting in these hard chairs already for 2 hours, some of you. So I really appreciate your being willing to go through this. And I always think of what the animals have to go through is a lot worse. But we were just flying in from San Francisco, arrived this morning at 4 a.m. our time, 7 a.m. here, and I felt a little bit of that because I didn't sleep the whole time and I'm still going here. So it's just part of the great blessing I feel that Madeline and I have of traveling around the United States, and also we just get back from Europe. We've been recently to India and China, and not too long ago to Africa and Western Asia. And to just be able to share this message and to see how the vegan movement is just exploding, really, I would say in many ways. It's really growing very quickly all over the world, and for you to be part of it. So how many of you, just so I have a feeling, have already actually read The World Peace Diet? Just so I have a sense of, so most of you, good, a few of you, most of you haven't read the book. So what I'd like to do is just talk about some of the main ideas. The World Peace Diet has been made, as Saurabh said, into an audiobook. It's 13 and a half hours long, and I would love to be able to just now talk for 13 and a half hours and kind of lay the whole thing out. But again, as a vegan, I don't want to cause too much suffering to you all. So, all right. But just to let you know, we have a book that focuses especially on veganism as it relates to social justice issues like racism and sexism and heterosexism and so forth. So if you're interested in that specifically, we have the Clickers of Compassion, which is considered one of the main books in that field. And then this brand new book is on developing intuition. And my PhD actually at Berkeley was on educating intuition in adults. And I think a lot of the vegan movement is within us as individuals. Wow, good job. Squeezing through here. Thank you. The hard job he has to get through. It's really connecting with our intuition, connecting with our own inner wisdom. Because the underlying idea, I think, really in the World Peace Diet, and then I think in the vegan movement in general, is the importance fundamentally of questioning the official narratives in our society. And that's the key thing. As long as we're not questioning the underlying narratives of the culture that we've been born into, then we're basically just cogs in this machine, which is devastating, obviously, to cows, pigs, and chickens, but I think much beyond that, to ecosystems and to us, and to the hopes that we have of a world for our children. So questioning the narratives in our society, the stories that we tell, the human superiority story, the protein story, the calcium story, the earth is not sufficient story, the authoritarian story, the consumerism story, all these stories, these narratives that basically come out of, I would say, if you look deeply enough, they come out of the word I've kind of coined is herderism, which is the foundation of our society, essentially. This is something that we're not taught. We're not taught that, it took me like 20 years to figure this out, that we live in a herding culture, a culture that's organized at its living core on owning animals as property for food. That's called herding. We're not herding them physically for the most part anymore. The animals are herded by these gigantic industrialized farms, but it's the same thing. It's basically they're imprisoned, they're bred, they're impregnated against their will on these rape rack machines. Their babies are stolen and killed, and then we eat their flesh and secretions and use them for everything that we want. And so this commodification of animals is the foundation of herderism. And so I think I feel so fortunate that I was able to experience a community back when I was only 20 years old, or 20, actually I just turned 22. It was called The Farm in Tennessee. Have any of you heard of The Farm? Yeah, some of you? Yeah, and it was the largest hippie commune in the world back in 1975, which is when I got there. The basic thing for me, really, at this point, is just to see that we have, essentially in our world, we have two powers. We have the power of each one of us as individuals, which is each one of us sitting here as an individual. We have our own creativity, our imagination, our passions, our yearnings, our abilities to, and our, I think really our intellectual and emotional and spiritual capacities that we're here on this earth just a few years to cultivate and to share. And then we also have, number two, we have the power of the group, right? The community that we're born into. And as individuals, even though we have this enormous capacities, we're born into a society where from the time we're little kids, we're forced to participate in mealtime rituals where we're eating animal-based foods. And anthropologists understand this very clearly. This is the fundamental, most powerful way that any society transmits its values from generation to generation is through the rituals of that society. And the main ritual in any society are the meals, right? So when people are sitting down and eating food, we're not just eating food, we're eating a whole set of attitudes and a whole set of stories about our relationship with each other and with animals and with the earth and with the cosmos. And I think when we look deeply into this, we can see that we're eating attitudes that are not in our best interest. If we were born as cows and pigs and chickens, we would know they're not in the best interest of animals. But they're definitely not in the best interest of us, or of the earth, or of hungry people. There's a whole mandala of interconnected web of consequences to animal agriculture, and it's devastating on all levels. So even though as individuals, I think we have within us tremendous capacities for creativity and wisdom and compassion and empathy and so forth, as soon as we're born, and even before we're born, we're thrown into a system of herding animals where the main ritual in every society, and we're forced to participate. Like I was forced, like as a little kid, to eat lots of meat, dairy products, and eggs. It was back in the 1950s in Concord, Massachusetts. I remember growing up, and when I was a little kid, my little baby sister was sitting in the high chair. My mother said I could feed her, and I remember, feeding her. And my mother said, but make sure she eats her protein, right? And so I said, okay, I'll make sure she eats her protein. And that was the thing she kept spitting out. And I was, making it like an airplane. Here comes the protein. And she'd go spitting it out. And I was like forcing it down her throat because I didn't want her to die of a protein deficiency. It'd be my fault, the older brother. She died because of you. So I was like forcing her to eat this meat. So this is what happens. We're born into a society and we're just forced. We don't have a choice. And they're very well-meaning. My mother loved us. She wanted us to get plenty of protein and plenty of calcium, and so she was very well-meaning. But the thing is, these are not our friends. Meat, dairy products, and eggs, and fish sticks, and so these are not our friends. We're taught that they're our friends, but these are actually very harmful to us, and we understand this. I'm sure if you're in this room, you're aware, basically, that it's not healthy. But on a deeper level, culturally, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, ethically, on every level, they shut us down. And I'm so delighted that I can say that my little sister eventually took us about 25 years, I guess, but I went vegan. and now her daughter is vegan, and her daughter has 3 little boys, and they're all vegan from birth. So it goes through the generations, and even my mother, bless her heart, she's 90 years old, she's vegan. And she's the only one in her retirement community in Florida that is not on some kind of medication. Everybody clap, that's great. A lot of people, they say that they're trying to get their family to go vegan and it's just not working. I say, how long have you been vegan? They say, I've been vegan 3 years. I say, don't worry, it took me like 20 years. Just got to be persistent, but it pays off. No, the basic idea is we can't change anyone, but we can understand the dynamics involved and understand that as individuals, even though we have enormous reserves of caring and kindness, awareness, creativity, imagination, and so forth, we're born into a society where it's about domination and exploitation and reduction of beings, and we're eating that. So we're learning at a very deep level to repress our natural compassion, our natural empathy, our natural intelligence. And when we do that, we fit into a system, right? We're raised to fit into a system that's basically exploiting not only animals, but ecosystems and each other. It's a system based on exploitation. And so the greatest gift I think we can give to the world in terms of creating a world where peace and freedom and justice and equality and sustainability and abundance are possible is to go to the root of this. If we don't go to the root is animal agriculture, because animal agriculture creates the template, essentially. This is the deepest connection we have with nature, with our society. You don't get deeper than eating something. It becomes the very cells of the body we're eating. If we don't address that, if we work for peace and justice and fail to address the underlying driving, spinning fury at the core of our culture, which is animal agriculture, that we're feeding our children and we're eating ourselves, we're just ironic in our quest. We want for ourselves what we refuse to give to others. It's never going to happen. So the whole idea is we have to live in our own lives in a way that we would like others to be able to live. So we have to liberate animals. If we want to have any freedom, we're called to liberate animals. And the beautiful thing is, as individuals, we can do that. Each one of us can do that as individuals. And then, even though we've been wounded, we've been bombarded with all these messages, we've been, in many ways, forced to eat animal foods, we can make an effort to liberate ourselves, not just from the outer actions of eating animal foods, but from the inner attitudes of seeing beings as objects, of criticizing and blaming and shaming, and putting other people down. All of that comes out of animal agriculture. So the whole idea, really from my point of view at this point, is that the most effective advocacy is really understanding this larger picture and the deeper picture of our society, and then also working to live this in our own lives as individuals, and then come together and then co-create communities that are based on this new story, essentially, this new narrative of equality and justice, of the strong protecting the weak, essentially, and allowing and honoring mothers and babies. Because animal agriculture, at its core, when you really think about it, you can't get anything more abusive and, in a sense, evil, really, than animal agriculture. I mean, it's about tearing babies from their mothers, killing the babies, impregnating these mothers over and over again, imprisoning them, mutilating them, torturing them, and then not only causing all that suffering, and then eating it, right? We eat it. We feed it to our little kids. Our little innocent kids are eating this horror and misery and terror. How can we ever think we can create a world of any kind of sustainability or abundance or wisdom when the fundamental ritual in every society that goes in at the very deepest level is the opposite of everything that we really as individuals yearn for, our values? So the great thing is that veganism, which is a word, but the underlying teaching of nonviolence, essentially, ahimsa, goes to the root of the problem, because the basic idea is to treat others with kindness and respect as best we can, and to make the connections so that our natural intelligence is growing. We're making connections. And so this is the key, I think, is the power of the individuals that each one of us has as an individual, recognizing that the communities we've been born into have wounded us, all of us. Even if we're vegans, I'm still, after 38 years of being a vegan, I'm still healing the wounds of judgmentalism and fear and all the stuff of being raised in a herding culture based on seeing others as objects to be used and manipulated for my own advantage. That's what animal agriculture basically is. And so we're still working on healing those wounds in ourselves, and then creating communities. Like this right here, Caravan of Dreams, in a sense, is a community based on a whole different set of values, based on justice and sustainability, creating delicious vegan food, reducing our environmental footprint, creating a context, an actual practical context. And that's the beautiful thing about veganism, is that it's not merely a critique of a system that's based on violence and domination and exploitation and oppression and injustice of other beings. We have a solution, right? I mean, the solution is fantastic. It's delicious. Wasn't it good? I mean, it's so funny. Madeline and I sometimes go around and we hear people say, "Oh, you poor vegans, I don't know what you eat," you know? I mean, if they had any idea, it's like the food is not only getting so much more delicious all the time, but all the consequences, all the ramifications of this, it's well understood now by scientists that are doing research in this area, that we can feed everyone on this planet on a fraction of the land, on much less water, much less petroleum, much less pollution. I mean, this is really good news. It's such good news. You can't get better news than that we can be much healthier physically, psychologically, culturally, economically, environmentally. And what do we give up? misery, terror, fear, disease, horror, suffering, and war, right? We give that up. The outside have to give that up. Slavery. But just by giving liberation, giving freedom, giving health to those beings who are in our hands and the animals of the earth, and letting them live their lives instead of saying, I'm going to crush and destroy you and steal your babies and kill you. No one wants to do that. No one, when we leave here and we see people going out and taking out their wallets, and this is, always remember, this is the voting booth right here. We take out, these dollars are not dollars, they're votes. This is what makes the system run. So when we're voting for animal foods, we're voting for raping and killing and abusing animals. And so when we see people doing that, just to remember, people don't get up in the morning and think, oh, I just want to cause some misery to a chicken today, so I'm going to go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. No, we're just busy. We're just, God, I got a meeting, I need to pick up some food, I stop there. So when we make the connection, that's the key, I think, is to make the connection between what we're doing and the ramifications of that, then as an individual become a part of the healing of our world. And I think this is the great good news that we see as we travel in South Africa, in Dubai, in Beijing, in Mumbai, and we just get back from like 25 cities in Eastern Europe, and Eastern and Western Europe, mainly Eastern Europe, and just seeing the explosion of vegan restaurants and vegan meetup groups and even vegan sanctuaries and vegan coaching and cooking classes. I mean, this is really something that is, I think, the time that we're living. I think we realize at a deep physical and I think even metaphysical level that our generation is it. I mean, if we don't make a fundamental change in our relationship with the earth and with each other and with the animals, we won't have, I mean, what kind of world we're going to have in the future is very bleak. And yet, I think there is a beckoning path. We can see it. It's the doorway is there. Each one of us can be part of this. And so vegan communities like this restaurant and like, what did you say, 13,000 people?
14,000.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's a community, a virtual community, but also here we are. We're flesh and blood people who care. And that's the beautiful thing. I know there's one thing that brought us all here, really, essentially, is that we care. We care on some level about animals and about ecosystems, about hungry people, about slaughterhouse workers, about women and females, and about future generations, and about our own spiritual and psychological and physical health, and caring about our own health, by the way. That's also very important. I think one of the greatest gifts we can give to others really is making an effort to be healthy. When we're healthy, we're really uplifting the whole world. And so I think it's important to have a foundation, I think, of veganism is social justice, or justice for the animals, but also to eat as best we can, a plant-based diet that is organic and is whole foods and essentially is healthy because our health is critical. And when we're healthy, we have energy, and health is not just our food, but that is a big part of it. It's also our mind, our level of exercise. There's many things that go into it. But really, we've seen this so many times that when people don't make an effort to be healthy and be conscious of their health physically and psychologically and nutritionally, that they can really burn out as activists, and so we don't want that to happen. We want everybody to be healthy. And I'm so glad that not only that I married Madeline, she's a fantastic role model for only buying organic and for being really kind of strict about the food, but also joyfully creating delicious foods that are not processed too much, not a lot of pesticides and herbicides and artificial colors and flavors. There's a lot of that stuff. Corporations really thrive, unfortunately, on sick people. I mean, that's where they make their money. I have been a vegan for 38 years, and because of this, we've been able to stay out of the medical system. I go to drugstores, maybe we go once a year to get some Band-Aids, but that's it. All these things, whatever it is, Right Guard and Rolaids and Tums and Viagra and Alka-Seltzer, and I don't know what people need, but the fact that if we try to live our lives according to the inner template of our physiology. And there's a chapter in the World Peace Diet called The Intelligence of Human Physiology, which just looks at our physiology, what we're designed to eat, that we've been given this wonderful gift of a physical body that does not require any animals to suffer to get all the nutrients that we need to be healthy and to celebrate our lives here. Really being understood so clearly now by all the research that's going on. There's still, of course, a lot of resistance by the pharmaceutical industry and by society in general to all that, but essentially that's what we're seeing. And I think when we realize that we've been given this wonderful gift, all human beings, then we realize that the only reason we're eating animal food is because we've been born into a culture where, from the time we were little kids, we've been all forced to participate in these rituals where we learned at a very deep level from people we trust completely to just refuse that gift and say, no, we're going to stab animals, we're going to imprison them, kill them, impregnate them against their will, steal their babies and eat their flesh, eat their secretions. And we not only cause enormous suffering to them, we do the same thing to us. So why do we continue in this behavior? Why is it that these ideas, they're very basically clear, straightforward, and simple. When we send them out into the world by conversations, by writing, by films, everybody doesn't go, great, I'm going vegan. What is the thing, right? I've been a vegan activist for like 38 years, and the resistance is enormous. People hear this, and if people say, well, you've got to just be rational. Vegans should only use rational arguments. And I think if we only use rational arguments, people aren't rational. I mean, if people were rational, everybody would already be vegan by now. So I think we need to use everything at our disposal. We use music, we use art, I think using poetry, drama, whatever we can do, because people really are not, we're not rational, we're rationalizing, right? We can rationalize anything, but at a deeper level, I think we're tribal in a sense. We want to be part of the community, we want to conform, we don't want to be different, we want to go along and be like everybody else. So the underlying idea, I think, is to realize that as we create these alternative vegan communities, like we're doing here, and you're helping be part of that, we create context for people to join, in a sense, another tribe, another way of living, the vegan way of living. And I think the more people who go vegan, the more people who go vegan. It just builds on itself. This is the thing. And so to understand the deep structure of our society, and from that understanding, then to be able to live this deeply and to see it as a great gift.